The Cold Omaha Podcast Network.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
Welcome, Giles and the Goalies Podcast. Giles Farrell. Across the table from me is Ben Remington.
Hello.
We're back at our regular haunt.
Mm-hmm.
Did you enjoy your week at home?
I did. I did a whole lot of laying on my couch and watching hockey.
Don't you hate pants?
That's always good, right?
Yes, that's always good. That is literally what I did every night this week.
Yeah.
Went home, laid on the couch, watched hockey.
Yeah.
That's as good as it gets.
Yeah, I didn't really do much this week. I watched hockey every night, basically. And then this afternoon, I stuffed myself stupid at the Fogo de Chao in Minneapolis, which was a splendid lunch experience.
Well, you had more food to eat than I have today, clearly.
Well, you had those wings, you plowed through those, and now you've got a delicious lime that you can eat sitting on the edge.
Yeah, that's a dessert of something else.
Sitting on the edge
lime
of that
follows something.
That their beverage.
You catch my drift. Well, it is Cinco De Mayo. You better get in the spirit.
No, I don't know. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have gotten like a Dos Equis instead of a Northeast. I don't know.
Well, what can you do?
Yeah.
All right, we got quite a bit of topics to hit. So before we do that, I'm going to help myself to that said thing and lime because, yeah, what the hell?
All right. Drink. See, I didn't take you for a training wheels kind of guy, but, not to say that I wouldn't, but... yeah, that's the face that I would make, too. Yeah. You had a little salt in your nose. Woo!
Oh, yes. I hate this. It is revolting.
More?
Please.
Well, that's not salt. I'm a baseball player from the 80s.
Oh, God.
Whoops.
I'm Daryl Strawberry. Now I play for the Saints.
You're Daryl Strawberry.
Daryl. Children, that's not very nice.
Yeah, we got a lot to get to, and
all right.
By God, does that burn the insides? Yeah, happy Cinco de Mayo to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Get that out of the way. But,
yes,
all right. So the first thing I have was we just, as the week went on, we kind of got some injury news that was wild related. We're going to try to stay wild centric through this podcast. Wow, did I really fumble through the first part of that? But Marco Scandella had surgery. I should probably have this readily available in front of me, but
well, whatever.
That would be very unfitting of this podcast.
Sure.
He had arthroscopic hip surgery on the left side.
Sure.
On, what was that, Tuesday or Wednesday. They said he'll expected to make a full recovery by next season. What team he plays for next season remains to be seen. But I did check the rules. He is eligible for the expansion draft still.
Yeah.
So if you have any concerns about that,
it's not like a Backstrom buyout kind of thing.
It's not a Chris Pronger where you have to be listed as exempt from the expansion draft. Think about that. Chris Pronger literally had to be listed as exempt on the expansion draft list.
Well, he's on their roster, so that makes sense. But
it doesn't. No.
What?
This drives me up a tree.
Why wouldn't they just expose him? What do they care?
Vegas isn't going to take him.
Well, no. So, I guess they're just saving everyone a bunch of time, but
unless it's like a rare thing where you fill your roster with 29 other guys and you just need to throw away a pick, so you're like, oh, we're going to take Chris Pronger.
Right.
So you can add that to Chris Pronger's Hall of Fame plaque.
We need the write-off at this point. That's weird. But yeah, Scandella, that's interesting because it seemed like he played better.
He had a really good playoff.
He
had a really good 5-game playoff.
I don't know, maybe he did some like rookie of the year kind of thing to his hip where it became like hyper mobile.
Maybe he was doing that acupuncture stuff. I heard that really works good.
I don't know. It's interesting. You hear all these other guys that got hurt, and you're like, oh, well, that would totally explain why they didn't have a good series. Scandella is quite the opposite. So good on him, I guess, for playing through the pain and playing pretty well. And if he ends up in Vegas, then I don't know. But is this the kind of injury that might scare away Vegas? Is the thing. I don't think it would because it seems pretty minor, but it's at least worth considering.
I'm guessing Vegas is going to do their due diligence on players who are injured but still eligible.
Yeah.
So obviously I'm guessing they'll get granted access to like medical records and then whatnot.
That's a good point.
But sure, that puts a little bit of fear, but that's why I looked to make sure that he's still eligible for the expansion draft, and hopefully Vegas enough of him in the playoffs to where they go, hey, he's really good, we should take him.
Well, now it becomes an interesting thing because it kind of seems like Dumba is the guy, the third defenseman that's going to be protected. And maybe he isn't. Maybe, there's still a lot of things in play, and you can make cases for Scandella and Brodin over Dumba. But it seems like Dumba is that guy, consensus amongst most people. But then you start getting into Brodin versus Scandella. And are you full on in the camp that you'd rather keep Brodin in this instance?
Well,
or
I'll tell you this. So I wrote the article on Thursday about Devin Dubnyk's goals against the playoffs. Broke it down, and of the film I watched of the playoffs, which again is 5 games, so I will put the asterisk next to it that said...
You're not going to overreact about a 5-game sample?
5 games.
Isn't that what you're supposed to do, though?
There's a lot going on in my head right now, and a lot of it was just driven by what I consumed. Wow, did I really fumble that sentence?
Well,
this is going to go downhill quick.
Good thing you didn't eat the worm.
But Jonas Brodin did not have a good playoff.
No.
At all. It was not good. So I don't want to say I hope he goes, but if it's him or Scandella that goes, I'm not going to lose sleep. And I'm guessing the Wild are probably going to maybe shove some kind of draft pick over to Vegas and be like, you know what, just take one or the other, either one. Just
I don't think they even need to, because I think from Vegas's angle, it's either they take one of them, or they're taking a guy like Eric Stahl, who is, got a good contract, but he's up there in years and just almost decapitated himself. Or Eric Haula, which is an interesting pick and somebody that the folks, what was Ken, right, from Sin Bin Vegas? He brought up by name.
He had a weird interest in Haula.
Yeah, well, which is understandable when you see Haula good. When you see Haula good, you're like, holy Christ, why isn't this guy one of the elite stars of the NHL? And then you literally don't see Haula for a month. So, this is what it is.
Rest in peace, your mentions.
Hey, I don't think... You wrote an article about it, for Christ's sake. I'm not the only one with that opinion. I didn't write an article about it.
Yeah, but it's all about a what have you done for me now kind of...
Oh, sure.
So that was one injury bit we learned this week. The other was Jason Zucker underwent... surgery to repair a bilateral core muscle. And if you're a Minnesota sports fan like Ben and myself, and you hear the word bilateral, you just break down.
That was the first thing I thought of.
Usually, bilateral is followed by leg weakness.
Yeah. Or any other inappropriate things that people like to add on to the end of bilateral to insult one Joe Mauer. So, yeah, that one's interesting. Hopefully Zucker doesn't get that faulty mesh that I keep seeing commercials about. But I don't know that he was completely bad or ineffective during the playoffs. He had that incredible goal in was it Game 5.
Jonas Brodin at his own blue line. Left wing pass here. Haula Zucker. Zucker sails it. He scores! Zucker scores! And the hockey game is tied 3-3.
But, otherwise that line wasn't as good as it usually was. We come to find out, Granlund has a broken hand, Zucker has a sports hernia. So, and I think Koivu actually did look pretty good in that series, but it kind of adds up. These things add up as far as, you find these things out after the season. It's like, oh, well, that would explain it.
And just looking at numbers here, you figure sometime end of February, early March, this injury might have happened because in the 16 games in March, Jason Zucker had 3 points. Wow. And then in April, in the 2 games he played in April, remember he sat out the last 3.
Yeah.
He had 1 goal. Wow. So really the last 18 games he played in the regular season, he had 4 points, which was nowhere close to what they were doing before that. And that was really a crucial element that was missing in the playoffs, was that line, because when those guys were on, they were on. And I want to say I mentioned it at some point, but you could argue that was one of the best lines in the history of the Wild.
Yeah, we did talk about that this season. And when this team was good, when the Wild were dominating, it was almost, I don't want to say exclusively, because there was obviously a lot of players playing well. That line, as you said, huge part of it. Huge part of it. That line took over games. Game after game after game. And then we come to find out, then they mix it up, and they kept, Boudreau kept breaking it up and putting it back together and breaking it up and putting it back together. And obviously Zucker had lost a step because of the hernia. You'd think at least, and it just, they were together in the playoffs, but it wasn't quite the same. And then they got broken up periodically in the playoffs too. And so, yeah, just an unfortunate end to a very, very fine start to the season for that line.
That's kind of the injuries we found out about this week. Haven't really heard any more out of what we already did, but
no.
Everyone seems to think Ryan Suter had something bothering him, but we never found out about.
Would it surprise you if you found out that Ryan Suter has had 18 different injuries in his career that he's just never disclosed to anybody?
It wouldn't surprise me because he doesn't say anything to anyone.
Exactly,
once the season's over, he just retreats to his farm and he's just secluded there.
Exactly. So that guy, it would not shock me at all if that guy had more scar tissue than Evel Knievel. It just either that or he's just I don't know, a Terminator or something, where he just literally his body is never going to break down, but for some reason his play just fluctuates. And also his play fluctuated, we felt like, because he was playing a lot more minutes in the playoffs too. And so, there was a lot of people pointing to that, and I think that's a fair argument.
His minutes did sharply go up in the postseason. I think he was averaging 29 minutes a night in the 5 games. But again, small sample, and I liked where it was, for most of the year. It was around 26.5, something like that, which is fair. And shooting up to 29 kind of showed that Bruce Boudreau didn't really have much confidence in the back part of the defense, and that also probably had something to do with the fact that these guys were playing from behind a lot. So you got to put your best on the ice. You don't have a lot of time to throw out your third pair defense.
Right. Well, it turns out that Christian Folin was injured too. I don't know if we've talked about that on the podcast, but he had a shoulder operation last week. So yeah, you're trotting Nate Prosser out there, and far be it from me for faulting Bruce Boudreau for not wanting to give Nate Prosser a ton of minutes, even though he's exactly what you want in a 6th/7th defenseman. But yeah, as you said, during the playoffs when you're behind, you're not really going to look to lean on Nate Prosser.
That was this week's injury report. So I think that'll close the book on injury reports, because I can't imagine we're going to hear any more injuries in the next hour long. I think everything that's going to come out came out this week. And all right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna do some season in reviews, because it's May 5th. And that's exactly what I wanted to do on May 5th was season in review. I'd much rather be in St. Paul watching Game 5 of Wild and Nashville. But no, I was deprived of that. So here we are.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm as equally lubricated.
Yeah, I knew I got here just after you got here because you had a fresh drink in front of you. But since then, you've polished off 1.5 of those along with your festive little shot there.
Yeah.
And we're well on our way.
So we're going to kind of rapid fire through these because otherwise it's going to be a 2-hour podcast and we don't need it to be a 2-hour podcast.
Right.
So we're just going to kind of quickly run down the forwards on the Wild this year and just have a few brief, emphasis on brief, thoughts on their season. And as I look at it, we're going to literally go down the line here on based on points. That's how we're sorting this.
Sure.
Just on Hockey Reference because that's just an easy thing to look at because God forbid the NHL have a website that puts out stats at a nice looking thing. So anyway, so first forward on the list, Mikael Granlund. He played 81 games this year. He sat out the last, and weirdly controversial sitting out of the last game. Later revealed that he had a broken hand, which he played with in the playoffs. But he finished the regular season with 69 points. He led the team in scoring.
Nice.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't pause after 69.
You didn't.
I'm terrible.
That's okay.
I'll edit that in. But he played literally all year on the wing, and he had that, that breakout season we all had kind of been waiting for. And
yeah,
to me, at the end of the year, like there were some power plays where I kind of like Granlund should have been out there because you wanted him feeding pucks to somebody,
right?
And he was the best one on the team that I thought could do it, and that was probably the highest compliment I could give him because before I probably would have just said Koivu.
Right.
But Granlund's emergence kind of seems to be he moving forward, and obviously the broken hand stinks, and he's one of the key RFAs after this year, and he's probably going to cash in on this nice season.
He will. He'll probably get a very nice contract. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think he'll recover just fine. I mean, we saw a similar injury not really affect Adam Banks all that much in the 1993 Junior Goodwill game. So
because we are ducks, and ducks fly together.
Hopefully he's able to bounce back. No, but seriously, Granlund went from a guy who you talked about maybe exposing to Vegas because the level of disappointment with him was that high, and he was a pending RFA that you didn't want to pay. But he's gone to the top point scorer on the team, and we're looking at a totally different deal now where him on the wing has been a revelation. Thank you, John Torchetti, and so far so good. So I guess now it's just to see if he can do it again.
Weird. Granlund didn't take off until a former coach was let go.
What?
Wow. Weird. Weird how that works.
Imagine that.
But, all right. Next one down the list, Eric Stahl, who at the beginning of the year we were cautiously optimistic about.
Yeah.
Just having him as a number 2 center behind Koivu, and he really took off this year. And he had a slump in like February before the bye week, but then he came back after the bye week and really looked recharged and didn't have the greatest postseason, but he had 65 points, which was second on the team, and you couldn't ask much more from a guy who you're only putting on a $3.5 million cap hit.
Yeah, it's a hell of a bargain. Kel Clutterbuck jokes aside. So, I think both of us really like that deal. And, oh, my God, did it pay gangbusters on that deal. So, the concern for me is obviously the concussion and how that affects him long term. I mean, we're seeing everyone kind of, the word concussion's being thrown around a lot now with Sidney Crosby, obviously. So you just hope, because I'm sure Eric Staal has suffered them before. You just hope there's not a lot of lasting effects. I mean, they talked about Crosby's concussions 2 nights ago during that game. He missed 48 games due to concussion a couple of seasons ago. So it's just the kind of thing where you hope he's ready to go for the season, and you hope that he's all square and good, and you hope there's no lasting effects. And we don't know enough about concussions right now, but we know that they're dangerous at times. So I guess we'll find out, where Stahl's at.
Hell, I forgot where I was going.
Nope.
I have no clue.
Got it? Nope. All right.
Nope.
Next.
Yep. All right. Hold on. Mikko Koivu. He also had kind of a renaissance year.
Yeah.
I was very down on him at the beginning of the year, as noted in our over-unders. But he really was good for a good chunk of the year, and he kind of slowed down at the end. But he still finished with 58 points on the season, part of the highly touted Zucker Koivu Granlund line. A good year at the age of 33, especially considering who was on his wings. But what I saw at the end was a little concerning, and I am hesitant to be one of those who should say, yeah, we got to get him to a contract extension as soon as July 1st rolls around.
Yeah, I think, you can say all you want about Koivu losing a step. I don't know that he has a whole lot of steps to lose. You know what I mean? Like, he's never been a fleet of foot kind of guy.
No.
He's always been a very skilled player, though. I mean, he's got a well-rounded game, even without the speed. So, but I'm with you. I don't know. I'm not itching to extend him. He's got 1 year left on his deal. I think that even if you do, you would hope it's at a relatively affordable term. He's not going to sign for an Eric Staal deal, and nor should he. But what's he making now? Is like 7.6 is his AAV or something like that?
6.75.
Or 6.75, yeah. You hope that number comes down a tad, because he hasn't really, that's a little. I mean, that's getting into pretty high air for hockey players. So you hope that he comes down more to the tune of like maybe a $5 million AAV, somewhere in that range. I don't think he's going to take a whole lot less than that, especially considering the year he just had. But at the same time, I don't think you give him a ton of years either. And maybe there's a trade-off there, and I don't know what it is, but
if we're talking about $5 million AAV, then yeah, we're gonna be talking like 2 years. That's it. Like,
yeah,
you can't be going more than that.
Well, I really don't think him bothered giving him an extension for less than 3 years. That's just my thought, but I think I would set, and this is early, and I haven't looked into it at all. But 3 years, $5 million per. I think that's the over/under point. I think anything less than that, you have to be pretty happy with. Anything more than that, you got to be like, ugh, that's.
See, I really. If you give him 3 years at $5 million per, then yeah, I could really be heavily swayed to join the Chuck Fletcher Pitchfork Nation.
Well, and I don't disagree. I think that, in that third year, is he going to be worth $5 million? Absolutely not. But at the same time, from his standpoint, why are you taking an extension less than 3 years? Even if you hit the market as a 34-year-old center, like he's going to, theoretically, he's going to get a 3-year contract. I mean, why would anybody give him anything less, especially if he has a year anywhere close to what he had this year? So, I don't get me wrong. I'm with you. I understand. I don't want to pay a 37-year-old center who's already slow $5 million a year, but I just don't see you signing him for anything less than that.
It's going to be one of those things where it's all on what he wants. Like,
true.
As it's been said,
you want to stay or you want to go?
Places he's he's literally got his own island in his native Finland. He's got a nice home. And next year, his actual salary, people don't know this, his actual salary is like $9.2 million or something like that.
Yeah.
So he's making a lot of money next year.
Backloaded deal, yeah.
It's going to be about just what he wants to do next, and if he wants to try and hang around and see if he can be part of a winner, great. And if not, like, the Wild have kids coming.
Yeah.
Joel Eriksson is going to be here next year, and we're going to talk about him later. But
and Luke Cunnin isn't far behind.
Like, Luke Cunning's going to be in Iowa next year.
Yep.
The Wild are starting to kind of build prospects up the middle, and there's not a lot of room for an old guy like Koivu to hang around. So if he's willing to hang around for a team-friendly deal, great, good on him. But if he's looking to just cash in again, then...
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you're right. I worry that he's built up a lot of equity here, and he's probably built up a lot of equity with Chuck Fletcher. And I worry that that's going to come into play. He's the captain. He's the most respected guy on the team, which I don't, certain people can argue that all they want, but within the locker room, it certainly seems that way. So I don't know. It's a really weird situation to be in if they don't extend him over the course of the next year.
We got to move on quick. That was a lot.
Yeah, it was.
All right. Next, Nino Niederreiter. Everyone's seemingly whipping boy for when the team slumps. He had 57 points this year, which fourth best on the team. Great. I think that's, maybe 60, 65 points is kind of his ceiling, but I think that's what you're going to see out of him. He's not going to be a top-line winger, but he's going to be a solid, second-line winger.
Yeah.
And I really had no complaints with him this year. No. I really didn't, even though he disappeared at stretches, but so do other players.
Right.
And
the thing with...
Again, my thing is, I'm just so tired of him being the whipping boy when the team slumps. Is all of a sudden Niederreiter becomes the poster child of how the team slumps.
It's so weird, and even if he went invisible a little bit, but sometimes. But I think it's worth noting too. He wasn't. How often did he have a consistent center? And I think he probably spent the most time with Eric Stahl, and that's when Eric Stahl was good. It was pretty obvious to me that Eric Stahl played his best when he had Nino Niederreiter, and when it was Nino, Coyle, and Stahl, I felt like that was a damn good line. Yeah, and so I don't know. I think Nino is always going to be underrated in his career, even if he reaches his peak. I still think he's underrated, as you said, as a really, really good second liner. But it just kind of is what it is with Nino. He's going to be criminally underrated. Hopefully that doesn't affect negotiations with him being an RFA this summer. Hopefully the Wild aren't afraid to give him enough to stick around. He's an RFA, so he's going to stick around somehow, some way. But I just hope that... I would almost prefer to see him get a longer-term deal than a bridge deal. I don't think he has a whole lot left to prove. He's not like Jason Zucker last summer, where you have no idea what you're getting out of Jason Zucker the next year, or Matt Dumba. I don't think you sign Nino to a bridge deal. I think you sign him to a Charlie Coyle-type deal and reap the benefits on the back end big time.
My point on Eric Stahl that I have just now remembered, as you were talking, was that he got shuffled around a lot.
He did.
He didn't have a lot of consistent line mates.
Right.
And as you argued, the same for Niederreiter. I felt like there could have been more production to be had.
Yeah.
And Stahl and Niederreiter, you can make the same argument about was, they probably could have done better if they were on a more consistent line that was doing well. Like we saw with Koivu, Granlund, and Zucker. The problem was Bruce Boudreau had kept juggling the lines, which I'll give him credit, seemingly worked because the Wild had a franchise best 106 points.
Right.
Okay. Next on the list, Charlie Coyle, fifth on the team, one behind Niederreiter. He had 56 points this year.
Yeah.
which floors me because I thought Coyle had a really good start to the year, and then I thought his second half had a lot left to be desired, and he still had 56 points, which credit to him because I was seemingly more frustrated with his play at times, but again, when you come away with 56 points in a season, that's a darn good year.
I think with Coyle, and it's similar to Nino, where they kind of appear and disappear and reappear. I think with Coyle, it's almost easier to diagnose because it seems like when Nino goes quiet, it's more, his game doesn't change a whole lot. You just see him just missing chances, and it's kind of like almost like a puck luck thing. When Coyle is off, it feels like it's because he's off of his game. It feels like because he's getting away from what makes him a good hockey player. He's getting away from using his size in front of the net and using his hands, and using the skill that he has, in those dirty areas. But to his credit, he had a pretty good postseason series, I felt like. He obviously had, a goal in Game 2, and I believe he had a goal in Game 4 as well? Or 5.
Yep.
Yeah, so
4.
So it seemed like he had a pretty good series, and he's all the way to the point where Pierre Maguire is knobbing him, saying he's going to be a 40-goal scorer. And it's like, well, all right, let's not get carried away here. I don't know that he's that pure of a scorer. I don't know that he's that lethal in any one area of the game. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see Coyle. I feel like Coyle and Nino are on very similar tracks. Obviously, except Coyle has got the extension already locked in, so that there's that. But he's obviously, I think, a future member of this team. I think he's a future core member of this team, is what I'm saying. So it'll be interesting to see where his development goes, because he's still pretty young. What is he, 25? He just turned 25 this year.
24. Jeez,
you're not even close. So, we still have a long time to see what kind of player Charlie Coyle is going to become.
Next on the list, Jason Zucker, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
He was having a really good year up until late February, early March, when he seemingly suffered that injury. But he had 22 goals, 47 points on the season, and as you said, after a year last year where you really didn't know what you were going to get out of him, that was a really good year from him.
Yeah.
Seemingly positive steps were taken under a new head coach.
Yep.
Shockingly.
What? So I think he's the kind of guy where he benefited greatly from a bridge deal. Because had they decided, for whatever reason, which they wouldn't have because it wouldn't have made any sense, but had they decided to lock him up for any number of years, he wouldn't have made much. I mean, he would have been lucky to get $3 million a year. Whereas now, I believe he had a 2-year bridge deal, I believe.
Yep.
So he's in a contract year again already this year. And, he stands to make a lot of money from that, too. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. And he, not inconveniently, he comes up to get paid at the same time where Koivu's contract drops off, and there's only a year left of Pominville's contract, so he very well, if he has the same kind of year, he will get paid. What'll be interesting with him is you got to wonder how much Vegas wants to go after him because of his hometown roots. He's literally the only player in the NHL from that area. It's not like a Minnesota deal where there's plenty to pick from. He's
one
literally
one of them.
He's the only only one of them. So it'll be interesting to see if Vegas, what they do or what they try to get him, if that even matters to them. Maybe it doesn't matter to them. Maybe George McPhee could give a flying F where Jason Zucker is from. Who knows? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out. We'll have more on the expansion later on.
Probably have a whole podcast devoted to it.
Jason Pominville, who highly criticized for his salary, or his cap hit, I should say, at $5.6 million. Finished the year with 47 points, tied with Zucker for 6th on the team.
So what you're saying is Jason Pominville had as good of a season as Jason Zucker. Would you have ever guessed that just sheerly based on Twitter?
No. Maybe for good reason. Like,
he's also making more. Yeah.
Now was the time to maybe try and see if somebody will take him. Like, I don't think you're ever going to find a better time, and if you can get him to Vegas for whatever, great. But again, this is all dependent on him moving his no trade clause, which, as you have pointed out, he's probably not going to do.
Yeah. And I see this from everyone, like when the Wild lost and everyone went on their rampages, their respective I'm the GM rampages. Get rid of Pominville. Okay. Sounds super easy, doesn't it? No, it's not. And we've learned, look at what Chicago had to give up to get rid of Brian Bickle's contract.
Had to give up Teravainen.
Toivo Teravainen.
Who's a good prospect.
Yeah, and that's not the only thing, too. I mean, they had to give up just the salary dumps. Patrick Sharp. They gave away him for a song because they had to. So, number one, you are not getting a damn thing for Jason Pominville. You're not getting a thing. You're not getting a pick. You're not getting a prospect. You're not getting a ham sandwich.
You're giving something.
Exactly. Maybe you'll get something back. You get a 7th-round pick. And you have to give up Jason Pominville and, I don't know, a 2nd-round pick, a 3rd-round pick, a guy like Christian Folin, a guy like, God forbid, I don't want to say anybody better than that, like Eriksson Ek or Cunnin. I don't think that's the case. But
those are going to be deal breakers.
Right, because you're not going to make that trade. But what you would have to give up to get rid of Pominville with just 2 years left on his contract is so astronomical. And maybe he's a good candidate where you play out this season with him, you have his contract expire, you have Mikko's contract expire, and I don't think it's done this season, but maybe next summer is a fine time to buy out Jason Pominville. I don't think it is this summer because then you're paying him for another 4 years, and I don't think you want deadweight that long. But, even as somewhat of a Pominville apologist, I think you buy him out next summer. And unfortunately for lots of very angry Wild fans everywhere, you really shouldn't before then, I don't think. I mean, that's a lot of dead money.
Well, the Wild next year are on the hook for $2.5 million cap hit on the Thomas Vanek buyout. So that comes off the books for 2018-19. So in theory, they would have no buyouts on the books for that year. So yes, they will probably buy out Pominville after that year because literally since the Mark Parrish buyout, they have been unable to go a year without having a buyout on the books.
Death, taxes, Chuck Fletcher having a buyout on the books.
Somebody's yelling into their listening device right now saying, that's why
you gotta fire him. That's why he's terrible. Buyouts are a part of the game. And you don't see them in baseball because they're not really allowed. You don't see them in football because they don't have to because they don't have guaranteed contracts. You see them in the NBA. You don't really see. I don't think they can do it in the NBA either. But then you just see a bunch of dead money, and their cap is so absurdly high in the NBA for how many players they have. It doesn't matter. Buyouts are a part of hockey. Look at every team. Every team has somebody on the books. That's just how it is.
Oh, to be the New York Islanders and have Rick DiPietro under contract for the next 15 years still. No cap it, of course, because he was amnestied.
Right, but you still have to pay him.
Zach Parise, he had 42 points.
Wait, he had less than Jason Pominville?
In 69 games this year.
Nice.
I was underwhelmed with his regular season, and that was probably because he was banged up for a good chunk of the year. And he turned it on in the playoffs, and I was very, pleased with that. But it felt like he was the one who really amped his game up another notch. Like the Wild played well, but I just never really felt like anyone else on the team like him quite upped their game like he did.
Yeah. No, I don't think he benefited from Boudreau as much as a lot of players did. And their injuries, obviously, I think they're a huge part of that. And that's why I was a little down on him going into the season, too, because he had so many injury problems last year. And when you start getting into back issues for a player, when has that ever ended well? It just never ends well. You don't see guys bounce back from back injuries and not be bothered by them long term. You just don't. The spine and the back muscles are just way too crucial to the human body to have that be something that you just get better from and it never bothers you again. So it's a very scary thing for Zach Parise, and I don't mean to be doom and gloom and to hate on him, because you have to love the guy as a player. I'm sorry. Whatever you think about his contract, maybe his personality dating back to last season, and he heard how things go, you have to admire him as a player on the ice, because nobody plays with the work ethic that guy plays with, and unfortunately, that's just part of the problem. I mean, it's like Josh Hamilton in baseball, and certainly he had a whole different set of circumstances, but that guy played so hard. I mean, he would literally run into walls on a nightly basis because he was playing so hard, and that's why you saw him be such a flash in the pan. So it's a very scary thing.
We never really hit on this, but I think my favorite Parise moment of the year was the end of the year when they had the North Stars jerseys for warm-ups, and he wore his dad's helmet and gloves. And we never hit on the North Stars jerseys in general, coming back for that evening. But that was really cool to see, and I saw you can bid on those jerseys, and I haven't even looked, but I'm guessing you can buy his for a lot of money.
Oh, God.
We jump down the list. Now we kind of finally hit the defenseman part of the scoring sheet. So you go down a few and you get Erik Haula, 26 points. And
we talked a lot about him earlier, and he's just so hot and cold, and it is really frustrating because you see him when he's on and he's so good, but you
can't tell listeners, but the tears coming out of my eyes are real. As the resident holla at you boys apologist, I feel for you, man. That really sucks that he's such a polarizing player. I'm the vice president of that club. I live with the president of that club. I don't know what needs to happen to get him to play better for a more consistent period of time. If I had that answer, I'd probably be in a much more
influential position.
Yeah, I'd be more well compensated. But when Erik Haula is on, he's truly fun to watch.
Yeah.
And I can write a book on how much fun it's been to watch him for the last 3 years when he's on. But when he's off, it's frustrating. I want to slam my head into the wall.
Yeah, because
I don't want to see him necessarily be on Vegas next year, but I'm not going to be surprised if he's on Vegas next year.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's the worst case scenario, because maybe on a team where he has more pressure, that might help. Because here he came into the season as a third-line center. He got more or less demoted, but more or less because the fourth-line center play was just so bad. I mean, Tyler Grayback really was doing nothing. And Haula, to your point, he wasn't really standing out as a third-line center either. So it was kind of a demotion. I mean, it wasn't earned demotion. But maybe if he goes to Vegas and he's their second-line center and he's a guy they lean on for a lot more minutes and a lot of scoring, maybe we see him flourish. Who knows?
If he goes to Vegas, you can count on me buying a Vegas Haula jersey.
Depending on how they look. Because I don't know. We'll see,
I'm probably going to be that guy who buys a jersey for everywhere Haula goes. Let's be honest here.
That's fair.
Because I'm going to be that guy who has a jersey for everywhere Paul Kariya goes.
Okay.
In my life.
All right.
I've already checked off the worst jersey from Paul Kariya's career on my list, so it's just all uphill from there.
All right. Did you buy that beer tap, by the way?
No,
you passed on the Paul Kariya Predators beer tap.
I didn't think I'd have a need for just a figurine with a beer tap up its ass. But it's also Nashville, which I forget. Like
I did
remember
too.
Paul Kariya went to St. Louis. I remember Paul Kariya played in Colorado. But I forget Paul Kariya played in Nashville. Like
it's a damn shame. But I won't get you started on that.
He appeared. Paul Kariya was visible at a hockey event.
What?
The other day.
Really?
I have to try and find this. Because I forget how it got like retweeted to my feed, but I was so glad it was. He was at a junior hockey league game and he dropped the puck and it was between, I don't even know if I want to say this. I don't know if I want to say this out loud. I might have to ask you for help because.
Where's that? Oh. Penticton.
There you go.
Penticton. Yeah.
He dropped the puck. I was so excited to see him out and about.
When you first said that, I thought, oh my God, he was at a Ducks game?
Oh. Why would the Ducks ever acknowledge their history? You know what? I was looking it up the other day. This is what sucks. Like, when Corey Perry and Ryan Getzlaf retire, they will both be in the top 4 and most offensive Anaheim Ducks categories all time.
Yeah.
It'll be Corey Perry, Ryan Getzlaf. Those will be 2 in the top 4. And they will join Teemu Selanne and Paul Kariya.
Yeah.
And when all is said and done, Teemu Selanne, Corey Perry, and Ryan Getzlaf will have their number retired by the Anaheim Ducks. And then there just sits Paul Kariya.
What happened with that? Do you even know? Was it because of his dismissal he's bitter with the team? Or
Paul
the
was
team
very
just
bitter about
reciprocates it?
how he was just kind of unceremoniously let go after their run to the Cup final that year. And then he is still kind of bitter about how his NHL career kind of unceremoniously
fizzled
ended
out,
because
sure,
of concussions, which is a fair point.
Yeah.
And I will understand that, but I want to send him a postcard today and just saying, please come back. just be in the spotlight.
Would you like to work in the Wild
at least
front
just
office?
come back so the Anaheim Ducks can retire your number in the eggplant and what is it, teal?
Teal, yeah.
Teal color that I so dearly love.
No, they called it eggplant and jade. That's what they called it. That's their words, not that mine.
So again, I've said it before. I will say it again. If the Anaheim Ducks retire Paul Kariya's 9, I will go out there.
Yeah.
Like I did for Ken Griffey.
And it's a sad state of affairs when fans who start goalie chants during shutouts and fans who can't figure out the syllables of their own team's name have their number retired before Paul Kariya does. Moving on.
We got off tangent.
We did. That's what happens anytime Paul Kariya is brought up on the podcast.
Yeah, we really go down a dark hole.
Yeah, that's, it's like you when you push my buttons, your button is Paul Kariya.
We gotta keep moving on here. As much as we could spend a whole podcast talking about Paul Kariya.
There's a lot of podcast topics like that.
The next forward on the list, Chris Stewart. 21 points in 79 games, and this was a guy who once put up 60-some points in a season. I don't get where the disconnect has been. He's now 29. I don't think we're going to get anything more than this. So I am just. Well, he is what he is. Yeah. He's a good fourth line player. Yeah. If you want him to be anything more, you're screwed. Right. But that's what he is, and I'm fine with it.
And he's a guy that can slide up to the third line in a pinch, but you don't want him there. And he's on a 2-year deal, so he's got one more year here at least, and it's affordable. I mean, he's making like $1.25 million or something next year, like 1.8. So, really not upset about Chris Stewart on this hockey team, and I'm really not upset when he's in the lineup either. I know some people are. Some people don't understand why he's even on the team because he fights occasionally, and they can't tolerate that. But I don't have an issue with him being on the team as a fourth liner. I think he brings just enough to justify being in that spot, especially given what he's being paid.
Next on the list, Jordan Schrader. It's been well said on this show that one complaint with Bruce Boudreau was that I didn't like how Schrader was getting used very little.
Yeah.
And in the playoffs, I would have liked to have seen him, but clearly Bruce Boudreau is a guy who values size, so he didn't want Schrader, the little guy, going out there against the big defense of St. Louis, and maybe there's a point to that, but I would have at least liked to have seen him get a shot, and for whatever reason, he didn't, and for whatever reason, Schrader seems to be in Boudreau's doghouse.
Right, and similar to how he's in Yo's doghouse. I can't figure out with Schrader either. Maybe it's a Justin Fontaine thing where you find out in the end that he wasn't that good after all. Or maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it is just, a size thing. It would have been interesting to see him in the series from the very start. Because maybe he could have changed that series in that one goal. Could have changed that series.
Right.
And then I'm not saying that like Jordan Schrader is a game changer. He's going to turn this team around. He is what he is, but if he creates, and we've seen him create goals, if he creates one goal in game 3, that's a totally different series. You know what I mean? Like, instead of them plugging in Ryan White for the hashtag grits, they plug in Schrader, and he scores in game 3. We're looking at a totally different series.
What if Jordan Schrader, gets matched up with the fourth line of St. Louis in game 1, and he scores a goal to open the scoring, and it's 1-0 Wild.
Totally different series.
Instead of the Blues going up first.
Totally different series.
Everything is so different. Like, that's what goes through my mind when I think of what Jordan Schrader could have done, but he wasn't given that chance, and
and ultimately the Wild didn't.
What could have been?
No, ultimately the Wild didn't lose the series because they didn't have Jordan Schrader in the lineup. I don't think we're saying that. We're not that silly. But, they certainly... Things could have been different, possibly. I mean, it very much could have been... like you said, that series was so tight. It was so tight. And you get 1 point out of Schrader. One play, one goal that he created, either for himself or for someone else. And that series changes completely. Yeah. And it's just, so I'm with you on the frustration there.
Martin Hanzal, acquired at the trade deadline, the highly touted trade that was the Wild's equivalent of going all in. He had, 13 points in the 20 games to close out the year and didn't have a great postseason, but I was still, pleasantly okay with that trade. And it'll ultimately be judged on the fact that the Wild went 5-0 in the postseason. Yeah. But you went out and you got the best center on the market to fill a need, and it just didn't work. That's how it goes.
And it had nothing to do with him. I mean, it's not that it didn't work because of him. Yeah, I think he played well down the stretch. He played exactly how they want him to. He didn't score a ton of points, but it's not like he was ever doing that before. But he was, a lockdown defender. And had the Wild run into the Blackhawks in round 2, if he could have taken Jonathan Toews out of that series, that's why they traded for him. Yeah. Let's not kid ourselves. They didn't trade for him to shut down Jody Laterra. That's just not why he was on the team. So, I don't know. I understand people's angst with that trade, but I much prefer that this team making that trade, 9 times out of 10 versus not making that trade, or making that trade and giving up a touted prospect instead of those picks. Because that was actually, a lot of us liked that trade because they didn't give up a single prospect in it.
I would like to see Hanzal hang around for maybe another year, but that's a pipe dream.
Yeah, it's not happening.
Montreal cries as a team who are going to vastly overpay for him this offseason. So I wish him the best of luck. Because we would have liked to have gotten that, as you said, that second round matchup with Chicago, because he was brought in for that purpose, and it was a shame we didn't get a matchup with the Blackhawks after Hanzal was brought in.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, so you don't make that, so to appease the angry crowd, you don't make that trade. You run into the Blackhawks in the second round.
And Toews
runs wild. then the same exact people are saying, we didn't even try to beat them. We didn't do anything differently. We didn't, it just, you can't win, basically, is what it comes down to.
It is a no-win situation right now for the general manager.
Right.
We got a few more here before I kind of cut it off. Tyler Graveck, 52 games with the Wild this year and spent some considerate time in Iowa.
I don't mind him as a 13th forward. And I think what you saw out of him, I remember games out of Tyler Graveck, and it was always a game after he was scratched. Because that guy, when he's got the supreme motivation of taking that trip down 35, he plays really well. And so
kind of like Jordan Schrader after a point.
Exactly. I think he's good in that, and he's very flexible. Obviously, he can play center. He played a little bit of wing too. I think he's good for that. I think he's good as a part-time press box, part-time fourth line guy.
Joel Eriksson-Ek, remember he had a good 9 games to open the year, and they sent him back to Sweden, let him play out the year with Farstad. And Farstad's season came to an end, and the Wild were really badly needing some kind of spark on the fourth line, so they called him back, and they said, we're going to burn your first year, the entry-level deal, to see if you can do anything. And he was just I was indifferent on him after he came back. I liked what I saw before he went, and then I was just indifferent on him because I think the team was just playing at a whole different kind of pace than what he saw when he left, so it wasn't really fair to him to just kind of toss him in there and say, all right. Hope for the best, but I will get into this in a little bit, but I am excited for what's to come with him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last one. We saved the best for last. Acquired at the trade deadline with Marty Hansel. Good old boy, Ryan White.
Sweet.
That's it. That's all we have for the Ryan White discussion. So we're gonna move on here because that probably went a lot longer than what I thought.
Sure,
but I guess I should have known after 103 podcasts that we don't talk lightly here.
No, I talk a lot, and then I bring up Paul Kariya, and you talk a lot, and it just that's just how it goes.
But okay. So the other Wild related thing I wanted to get to this week before we dive into the NHL playoffs and the mailbag, I was looking at our favorite website the other day, Aesthetics. Yes, remember that, you clowns. I said Aesthetics.
I wish I was editing this show. I would edit in you saying Ice the Ticks.
I'm sure you're going to edit that into the clip show.
Absolutely.
But so I was looking through the jersey concepts, and there was one from a few weeks ago for the Wild, and it was a very realistic concept of what they might look like in the Adidas takeover.
Yeah.
And if I had prepared, I would have had that on the computer here visibly.
Well, and luckily this isn't a visual podcast, but I think given the clues that we've been given,
it's really not far off.
I think it was pretty accurate, yeah. So I feel like it does have very much of the Stadium Series vibe to it, where, it's a green jersey, the cream shoulders, that kind of thing. The regular logo as used as a crest for home and away, which is something this team hasn't done in quite some time. But yeah, I think this is pretty close. From what it sounded like for a while, it sounded like they were going to do something more drastic. But this isn't really all that drastic because the white jersey doesn't really change much.
No, which
is fine because it's a sharp jersey.
As I said, the white jersey, and we're gonna post this on our podcast Twitter account at GATG Wild Podcast. So look for it there. But as I said, as we discussed this on Twitter when I pointed this out, was that the white jersey really kind of gave a feel to the original white jerseys.
Yeah.
with where it doesn't go too far from what they are now, where they have the green shoulders.
Yeah.
But in addition to the green shoulders, you get some Iron Range red and gold. All I can think of is Casota gold, but I can't. That's not right. But it's just gold trim.
Yeah.
Which is it's a good look. Like the homes, I don't know, but what I also said was that the Wild finally have matching jerseys for the first time since those original jerseys.
Yeah.
Really, since they dumped the primary green homes in 2006.
Yeah, since the Reebok Edge.
They really haven't had a matching set.
Yeah.
And this is a matching set, which I think they're probably going to try and go for.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense because, push comes to shove, and there are some exceptions. Matching sets just look better. They do. And maybe that's a fair criticism of the current Wild set, is that nothing matches, even though it all looks, like it's from the same era. But I think you're right. I think having a matching set is a good look, and I think this is, I don't know if it's an improvement over what they have right now, because I do like the green jerseys right now. There are some changes I would make to them, but I think this is, getting rid of the red obviously was a priority. I think this is a good set. I think this is, you can say, this is maybe best case scenario for the Wild with this redesign.
Yeah. And it has the bear head.
Yeah.
That's what we'll call it.
That's what I'll
has
call it.
the crest on the green jersey. And to be fair, I love the alternate green jersey, with the exception of the fact of the shoulder piping. You take away the shoulder piping, and I will argue that is one of the best jerseys in hockey, period.
Yeah.
But the shoulder piping really is a problem for me.
Yeah.
So that is the concepts we're looking at, which I really think is going to be close to what we see. And there's no three stripes down the side, so bonus for Wild fans.
Yeah, well, whoever made this concept, they did a good job, but they are missing the three stripes, because we are getting the three stripes. That is. I don't know.
Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll be lucky.
Maybe we won't. Yeah, on some teams it wouldn't look half bad, but on others it would, imagine putting three stripes anywhere on the Canadiens jersey. Sacrilegious.
Well, as we've said before, the original 6 teams aren't getting three stripes.
You're probably right. So, yeah.
All right. So that's that. Like I said, we're going to post it on our Twitter account, so you can check for that there.
Yeah.
We're going to quickly try and blow through what we have left here, but NHL playoffs. We are recording this on Friday night, and as we record, St. Louis and Nashville are locked in at 1-1 in Game 5, but that series, to me, is just all but over. Nashville is just running wild over St. Louis, and they're getting goals to back that up, unlike the Wild. Did you enjoy watching James Neal just...
credit to him.
Destroy Jake Allen.
That was a hell of a shot. And here's me, goalie apologist.
Shocking.
That shot was very hard to stop. Would Jake Allen have stopped that shot against the Wild the way he was playing? Yes, absolutely. But it just that was a laser beam, but by the same token, to your point, yeah, James Allen is not playing as well as he did against the Wild, obviously, and the Blues aren't winning the series. Shockingly, right? Who knew that without Jake Allen standing on his head, that they can't win a hockey series? Who would have seen that coming? It's almost like we said that, to all the Yo apologists. Sorry, but
now this could be a hot take, but that Allen shot kind of was a little bit reminiscent to me of the Steve Yzerman, John Casey shot.
It was.
Where it just went over his shoulder unexpectedly.
Yeah, it was.
The goaltender had no chance. Ottawa, New York, that is tied at 2, and we kind of talked about this before, that really if New York wins Game 5 tomorrow, that's as good as it for this series, because the Senators are really just kind of treading water at this point.
Well, and furthermore, I think the series is also over because whether he plays or not, Erik Karlsson is hurt. And he was hurt enough to not play in the third period, which I understand. You're Guy Boucher, you're already down 3-0. Might as well rest him. But then something that you brought up earlier, Craig Anderson isn't playing all that well, especially in the last 2 games in New York. So, yeah, maybe that series goes 7, but I kind of doubt it. I kind of with you. I think they take Game 5 just on the fact that Karlsson's banged up and Anderson isn't playing well. And I think Game 6 is all but Game 6 is academic. So, good series, though. I mean, those first 2 games they were basically the Erik Karlsson show. And then the Rangers really turned it on, and they could be a very dangerous team. It seems like, and I've seen this from some people on Twitter, where when the Rangers are on, man, they're good. Man, they are good when they are on. I mean, we saw incredible games out of Brady Shea, and obviously Henrik is a little bit back on top of his game as well, as you predicted. So it's got to look good for those New York Rangers. I mean, especially looking across the lineup at a wounded Penguins team that may or may not be closing out a series soon.
I was trying to save that for last.
Well, we can talk Duck Wads. They're on the TV.
Well, okay, quickly, Ducks Oilers.
That's going 7. I don't know about you, but that's going 7. No way, it doesn't go 7.
I don't know. I think the Ducks are going to win the last 2. It's tied at 2 right now. I think the Ducks are going to win the last 2.
That would suck.
I think Edmonton hit the wall.
You might be right about that. They're young,
but we'll see. As I said, I think they're playing after this.
Yeah.
This game, so we'll see what happens. But I think this is over in 6 for Anaheim.
All right.
All right, and then. On to the last one. Pittsburgh and Washington, with Pittsburgh holding a 3-1 series lead on the Capitals. All year, I've paid my dues. I've taken my crap. I've not even bothered to reply to people in the hopes that Washington just wins it all so I can shut him up. Nope. I was wrong.
It's even better for me than it is for the listener, because the look of exhaustion and mental anguish on Giles' face is just, if you know Giles, it's very peak Giles. Just how disgusted he is right now with the fate of the Washington-Pittsburgh series. And you know what? I'm a little bit with you, because even and I've said this a bunch of times, I'm a little bit of a closet Pens fan. A little bit. I'm not actively cheering for them. But I like the team. I like the players. I like the jerseys, obviously.
I'm not saying the Penguins are bad.
No.
I'm just... I want the Capitals to just win for a change, so the narratives can go die a fiery death.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I meant. Like I said, a little bit of a closet Pens fan, but I did want to see the Capitals win. We talked about this last week. Who do you want to see win? You want Alexander Ovechkin to win a cup. I'm so tired of hearing about him not being good enough, not being a playoff performer, blah, blah, blah. And maybe his legacy is he's the Dan Marino of hockey. Maybe that's just what it is. But I would really rather not see him classified like that. And obviously you and a lot of other people feel that way too. So disappointing to be sure. You hope that somehow, some way, Washington comes back in this series with Sidney Crosby. Sounds like probably not playing at least the next game, possibly more games with his history with concussions. But I guess we'll find out. I think they're winning Game 5. I think that's fair. But then Game 6, I don't know. That's going to be the pivotal one.
The Capitals have dominated this series.
Yeah,
but are trailing 3-1. Stop me if you heard that before.
Also, and less so like the series that we are familiar with, which we're not going to mention, Braden Holtby not playing well. And that's a huge part of it, and that's surprising. Being vastly outplayed by Marc-Andre Fleury right now.
Before the series, Evan Sporer used to write for Wild.com.
Yep.
He really pointed out how good Braden Holtby had been in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I really had noticed, and I looked, and I was like, man, he's really good. And, of course, he just takes a dump in this postseason. Like, it's just so bad.
Yeah, and Marc-Andre Fleury having a renaissance year, as much as Eric Stahl, if not more, in the playoffs. Matt Murray goes down in warm-ups of Game 1 of the playoffs, and Marc-Andre Fleury is like your runaway Conn Smythe winner right now. I mean, if this team gets to the Stanley Cup final and he doesn't crap the bed, I think he's a runaway Conn Smythe winner. And, you can probably count on one hand the people that would have predicted that 15 minutes before Game 1 of their first playoff game.
I'm going to apologize to the Capitals, their fans, because I was at a St. Paul establishment during Game 1 of that series, which was pregame of Wild Blues Game 1.
Yeah.
And I saw Matt Murray go down in warm-ups. And I sent a message to a couple of my brothers. And I said, Murray goes down, Pens are screwed. Maybe not in this round, but the next round. This is why I should never speak.
Giles is going to become a mute.
But yet you people listen to me talking to a microphone.
What do you mean, you people?
Oh, sorry. Serious mashup. Listens to me talking to a microphone.
Him and a couple others, yes.
I'm distraught about this Capitals series because after this I don't really know who to cheer for outside of the Rangers, but whoever comes out of the Ottawa-New York series is just going to get crucified in the third round.
You think so? I don't know. Like I said, I think the Rangers...
Unless Henrik Lundqvist has a .960 save percentage in the third round, no one is going... The Penguins are going to go on to the Cup final.
I don't know. I think more of it rides on Sidney Crosby, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, who knows? If he doesn't come back, it's a whole different deal.
I did want to touch on this quickly because everyone else has, and I'm no different. I have opinions. You're listening to this podcast. Why should I care? But the hit on Crosby that knocked him out was highly debated.
Yeah.
A lot of columnist hot takes.
Oh, God.
Like, we found a whole new level of hot takes that I couldn't even imagine. But I thought the play was a very bang-bang play.
Yeah.
But I will say that I thought Ovechkin should have gotten some kind of penalty for a high stick or slash.
Yeah.
And then... if you want to give Niskanen 2 for a cross-check or... I'll see just the major for cross-checking, fine. But the game misconduct, I thought, was a little too far. He wasn't suspended, obviously. But, right. I mean, you really look at it. I mean, he looks up, and Crosby's, like, in his face. So it's just human instinct to just kind of put your hands up. And he has a stick in his hand. Like, that's how it is. And I get it. He's highly paid to do that.
Yeah.
He's highly paid to play hockey, and he should know better, but it's not. I'm not just a Capitals apologist here. Like, I don't want to see Sidney Crosby get injured. I don't want to see Sidney Crosby miss any more time, period, because as a fan of hockey in general, I understand that Sidney Crosby missing any more time is bad for hockey because he's been on a whole other planet this year, and I'll argue that this year he's the best player in the world, but Connor McDavid will still win the Hart Trophy.
Probably.
I just don't buy into these narratives that the Capitals were out to hit him.
No.
It's terrible. I don't know. don't know how, as a certain columnist who's a member of the Professional Hockey Writers Association of America,
that blew me away,
can write such a ridiculous thing like that. And, not that we're ones to want to be, a credentialed member of the media, because we're really not.
We don't care.
We've had this discussion time and time again, but there are others who want to be in the room, and they don't get that opportunity. And then you have takes like this for people who are in the room and will continue to be in the room, which is what drives me up a tree to no end.
Yeah. That take, and people who bought into it, mainly within the city limits of Pittsburgh, insanity, and just blows me away that an actual professional writer would come up with that. Not only come up with that, but write it in all seriousness and publish it. And the best part of it, and I don't know if you saw this or not, some idiot tweeted at Michael Russo and read him the riot act, which is hilarious. I'm not going to say the dope's name that did it, the writer we were talking about, but the writer we were talking about has a name very similar to Russo, and so that this just clueless buffoon on Twitter goes off on Michael Russo about how he's a hack, and that was thoroughly entertaining. That one a little strong then.
That's just...
You mean okay?
That is not what I ordered. I'm going to try to get through it.
What is it? Was it something totally different?
It is not.
Okay.
Anyway, we got so that's what we got on the hit, because everyone else has talked about it.
I mean, our opinions are no different than anyone else who has a brain, basically, is what it comes down to. And anybody who has a brain, we agree with.
It just reinforced my want for the Capitals to do something good, because I'm just tired of these narratives against the Capitals, against Ovechkin, because there's a lot of good players on this team, Ovechkin included, and it just pains me to see people just try to take away from what they've done. I don't know, I just appreciate good hockey when I see it, and the Capitals are good at choking come this time of year, but
and also, it's a damn shame if this series doesn't go 7 too. You know what I mean? Like, from a fan standpoint, I'm. You asked me before, and I didn't think about it at the time, but I've always had this stance. I'm team Game 7 all the way. I want to see a Game 7 in every series, especially good series like this one. And that's maybe the biggest loss to hockey fans of this series ends Saturday or even Monday, is that this series doesn't go 7.
Game 7 is. If you have no rooting interest in Game 7, it's wonderful.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
When you do,
it's brutal.
It's just so gut-wrenching. Yeah. I want to hate everything. But another time. So
sure,
we're gonna hit the mailbag.
Mail time.
Quickly. But we've really gone on a long time here.
It's all right.
So we open up our Twitter mailbag from our podcast account at GATG Wild Podcast. So I threw it open earlier today. We've got quite a few questions in here. One very related to what we just talked about from Graham Young. Will Ovi go down as the best player to not win a cup?
Well, Graham, if he doesn't win a cup, yes, absolutely. And for that matter, off the top of your head, who can you think of that hasn't? Well, right now, who's the best player that is retired that never won a cup? I noticed by looking at you what your answer is.
Paul Kariya.
But no, he's probably on that list somewhere, right? And I don't know. I don't know. I can't think of a guy. Nothing jumps out to me. I would have to look. I'd have to look at some things, because I'm not super familiar with hockey before basically 1995. So because I was a little young for that. But I think maybe a guy like Pat LaFontaine comes to mind. I don't think he ever got a cup. if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure there's. Matt Sundin is a guy who had a good long career, never won a cup.
Eric Lindros,
yeah. John LeClaire.
See, we can just file down a list of 90s.
Yeah, we're just going to start naming really good players from the 90s now. So, for my own selfish purposes, I don't believe John Van Beesbroek ever won a cup. He was a favorite of mine.
Curtis Joseph.
He never won a cup, really? Didn't he win with Detroit, or no? He didn't?
I think so.
Because he was in Detroit for a couple of years. Did he not win one there? If not, he's also up there. So, yeah, there is, but I don't know if there's, like I mentioned Dan Marino before, maybe that's Alexander Ovechkin's legacy, that he was otherworldly but never won a cup, and maybe he becomes that name synonymous with success and not winning a cup.
I think there are, as we've seen in the history of hockey, everyone wins a cup at some point, unless you're really, really unlucky.
No.
So I still hold out belief that like Ovechkin and Henrik Lundqvist are going to win a cup at some point. It might not be with the team they're playing for.
True.
But they're going to win it at some point. And sometimes you have to go to a different team to win it all. And we saw that, I think, like a prime example of that is like Brett Hull.
Yeah.
He was St. Louis hockey for however many years, and then he ended up going to Dallas, and he won a cup there. He won the game-winning goal.
Ray Bourque.
But, yeah,
same thing.
Yeah, we got to talk about that on the next show. But in an alternate universe where the Wild don't exist, we pick our hockey teams. We have to talk about that. But we're going to put that to the next show.
Yeah, we've taken enough time already.
Gone so long.
We still have a couple of questions left.
More in the mailbag from @Daniel Mick.
Who's
Dapper
that?
Dan.
Okay.
Who was the most and least frustrating player in a Wild uniform this season?
I don't know. We talked about Haula and how you would get really hot and cold stretches for him. We talked about the kind of hot and cold from Nino and Coyle. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's really a toss-up. I don't think any one of them I could really pick. Honestly, Dubnyk's struggles were frustrating. I think the month of March out of Dubnyk was very frustrating. Maybe you want to put that on how much he played up till that point, but very frustrating. Like it seemed like there was a bad month for almost every player on this team for a time there. I don't know. I guess gun to my head, I'm gonna go with Eric Haula because I feel like he could be up there. He could be a 40-50 point guy. I don't want to say easily, but it's not a stretch to think of him as a 40-50 point guy. And he just didn't really come particularly close this year. So
least frustrating, I'm going to go with Granlund, just because I really had no complaints about him.
Oh, he asked for least frustrating?
Yeah, most and least.
Oh, most and least. Okay.
And then for most frustrating, I think I'm going to go with Darcy Kemper. Just
that's fair.
Just because he threw him into the net, and you want to rip your hair out. Just a lot left to be desired, and his Wild career is over.
Yeah, that's just good.
They can't count on him anymore.
Right. He needs a change of scenery as much as anyone. I think my least frustrating is Jared Spurgeon. He was phenomenal all year.
That's a good one.
That's kind of a slam dunk, I think.
That is a good one. All right. From Ethan Hofflin, what Wild prospect are you most excited about? We might have a consensus on
easy,
this.
Yeah. For me, it's Kirill Kaprizov. Because I like Luke Kunin, I like Joel Eriksson-Ek, I like Alex Tuck, I like, on down the list. Kirill Kaprizov could be a game changer. He could be, and not to, kind of because of the Russian connection, but he could be a Tarasenko for this team. He could be that kind of game-changing scorer.
He gives you hope for the Wild long term.
Yeah.
And as our Twitter friend State Up Stats pointed out this week, he was traded to CSKA Moscow, which is basically the the New York Yankees of the KHL.
Right.
And obviously there's concern because that's the big team of the KHL, and maybe they're going to throw a lot of money at them. But when you think about it, a lot of players are leaving the KHL because the KHL is a tire fire right now.
Yeah.
And I will reference that with the fact that the guy is Slepyshev.
Yep. Just signed with Vegas.
Dadnoff is apparently looking to leave the KHL. Could sign with Vegas. Ilya Kovalchuk apparently is looking at returning. Radulov came back this year from the KHL, and it seemed like he knows
Spotka.
All the great players in the KHL.
Yeah. Well,
leaving.
And somebody pointed this out, and it was an article, and I forget if it was the one that State of Stats wrote, where KHL you can make some money,
right?
But not a lot of money. You can make some money, but the amount, I think it was 20 players in the entire league are making more than $2.5 million a year. And that's paltry money in the NHL, as we well know. But yeah, 20. So not even half of their all-star teams, are making what would be a third line, fourth line type money in the NHL. So I would be shocked if Kaprizov doesn't come over. I'm very excited for it. I'm also very wary of the rug being pulled out from underneath me because I'm a Minnesota sports fan. So I don't know. I'm trying not to. I'm not getting a jersey of his sewn up just yet, but I'm very excited for him.
So we're in agreement there.
Yeah.
Second one from Ethan. Are you more nervous or excited about the Adidas Wild jersey redesign? Well, we kind of hit on that. Obviously, I think there's a little more nervousness than there is excited, but I will say that if we can get something close to what we were looking at earlier, I'm not going to be displeased.
Yeah.
I think I would like that. We're a matching set, and they get rid of the Reds, but this is all speculation. There's nothing definitive about any of this. So
yeah, I think right now the current greens and whites are probably the best two jerseys in this team's history. So counting on this redesign being better than that is maybe foolish to be actually excited for it. I think at best you're looking at a push. And like you said, probably much more on the nervous side because it can be very easy for this team to screw it up. And we're probably much more nervous that that's going to happen versus excited that it's going to somehow be better than the set they currently have.
So we have about roughly 1 million questions from our friend Serious Matchup. I'm just kidding.
Love letters from Austria.
There's a little less than that, but he did get in a few. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we get to all of his, we did have one slip in there from our friend Gretchen. Best place for tacos in the Twin Cities area.
Okay.
Yes, it is Cinco de Mayo.
Well, there's this nice little neighborhood joint down the street from me. It's called Chipotle.
Don't you hate pants?
I'm a big fan of their tacos. I think they're phenomenal.
What a lazy take.
I thought about this, and quite honestly, I haven't hit a whole lot of taco spots around here. I've been down to the west side. I've had some authentic Mexican stuff, but that's not really what you think of. I know you threw it on a DM, and Dan brought up Barrio, and that's a pretty good take.
Place.
Yeah, Barrio is pretty solid. But I can't think. I've been to Chino Latino. That's a very interesting fusion cuisine. I think that's worth a try, but it's very different. You're not going to get a white person, a white-ass white gringo taco at Chino Latino. You're going to get something very different. So I don't know. I mean, I really haven't perused all that much. So I can't really give a great answer. I guess if I had to go somewhere that besides Chipotle, which I do really love, I would say Barrio. Barrio is pretty solid tacos overall. I got to say.
Yeah, we did have to crowdsource that because.
Yeah, that would have been my answer too.
We both just go to Taco Bell.
I am not beneath Taco Bell. That is for damn sure.
First of many from Serious Mashup. Who would you rather protect in the expansion draft, Brodin or Scandella?
We talked about that a lot.
Yeah. If I'm picking one so that the other goes, I'm still going to go with Scandella.
Well, the problem is that you're picking between those two and Dumba. you can only pick one out of the three. So that question is kind of, because if you expose Dumba, I think he's taken.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty universal. So I don't know. I'm leaning with you where I wouldn't mind seeing Brodin gone versus Scandella, but that's a lot of recency bias because Scandella had a good postseason, even though he didn't have a very good regular season. I mean, we cursed his name so many times during the regular season. There's a lot of recency bias there, so it's really kind of it's really a 50-50 deal for me, I got to be honest.
Yeah. Serious Mashup does go on to apologize for jinxing the Caps the last time he filled the Twitter mailbag. And then he does say that he feels sorry for Ovechkin and myself.
Oh, that's nice.
It's good to be in rarefied air.
Yeah, that's good. That's nice of him.
What can Chuck Fletcher, Bruce Boudreau do to put the Wild in a more likely position to succeed next year? How do you fix head issues with this team?
I don't know that this team has head issues anymore. We always talked about how mentally weak this team was under Mike Yeo. And I think that was a thing. And I don't even know if that's a criticism on Mike Yeo directly. I don't think it was anything he did on purpose, obviously. But I felt like this year they were a lot more resilient. And that month of March, I mean, like we've said a zillion times, that was almost entirely Dubnyk driven. So I don't know. It just I don't know how do you. There's probably moves to be made, and I don't think you want to keep this team together so badly that you don't make a trade this offseason. But I just don't know what's out there, even with the expansion draft on the horizon. I just don't know what you could possibly do because they can't sign anyone. They're up against the cap, and I don't know what trades they make, given that each team is going to be losing a player anyway. You're losing depth, so.
Who will be the backup goalie next year if not Stalock?
I think that's where you can sign someone. And I'm not wild about Stalock being their only backup. I think if you do go into the season intending on that, please sign someone else with NHL experience to play in Iowa. I think ideally, and I think this is what they're going to do, I think they do sign someone like that, and there's a camp competition. And who knows how lopsided that competition is. Maybe they do want Stalock to be the backup next year, but I don't know. I just don't know, and I think that relying on Stalock, given his NHL numbers, is maybe a little foolish. But obviously, he proved himself this season. He had a great year in Iowa. He had a great call-up for 2 games with the Wild, so... if it's him, great. If not, I think it's relatively easy to find someone similar to him this summer.
As long as it's not Darcy Kemper.
I think we're pretty much guaranteed to that.
From Josh, does pineapple belong on pizza? Dip it into the food tapes. I guess it's not my cup of tea.
Sure.
But, I respect that others do like that.
Sure.
So
it's very nice of you, Giles.
Whatever, but I will go other directions when it comes to what's on my pizza.
Me for the most part too, but I do occasionally enjoy Hawaiian pizza. I think it's a good curveball. I think if you were to order 5 pizzas, if I were to order 5 pizzas, one of them would be Hawaiian pizza. And the whole war against pineapple on pizza, I don't really understand. Because pizza sauce is made from a fruit, so I don't understand why you're so angry about fruit being on a pizza. It's this weird, there's certain things that taste gross. I understand people taking a stance against, like anything Travis Yost tweets about. But today he went off on how bad peanut butter is mixed with things. What
if you're expecting good
terrible
takes out of him.
And he eats popcorn with a spoon. Anyway, I don't understand the vitriol for it. I just don't get it. If there's a salty sweet, the savory sweet, that's the thing. People can hate on it because it's a sweet fruit, but sweet goes with everything. That's the nice part about sweet things. You can pair sweet with anything. Sweet and salty, sweet and spicy, sweet and savory, sweet and sour. It works with everything. That's why we use it.
All right. From Serious Mashup, How about Michael Grabner? I'm assuming this means to, sign. Austria's hockey fans are already going bonkers over him tearing it up in the playoffs after Vanek has teased us for 10-plus years with his talent-lacking effort. Grabner is as close to a cup as it gets for an Austrian. And he puts in hashtag Rangers bandwagon. Well, let me tell you, my friend, that when the Capitals lose tomorrow night, I am all aboard Team Rangers.
Damn it, Giles, you're going to ruin it.
So I'm sorry, then the Rangers are going to just aptly bow out.
What about Michael Grabner? They're not going to be able to afford him. Is he talking about him winning a cup with the Rangers? I would like to see it. We want the Rangers to win. We want Henrik Lundqvist to get a cup. But if you're talking about him in any respects joining the Minnesota Wild, I don't know why you think that might happen.
And again, I guess just in the Wild, they're going to make moves and they're going to be trades. Free agent signings are not going to be a thing.
Exactly.
And that's really all it comes down to.
It is what it is.
How about trading Scandella for Oscar Klefbom, both around $4 million cap hit, and pairing him with Mike Riley next year? Well, my feelings on Scandella are well known on this podcast. I haven't seen Oscar Klefbom enough to gauge an opinion of him. I'd have to study video, which I can do now. I have a new computer, which is pretty nice.
Yeah. I don't understand that move. I just don't why is anybody making that trade? I don't get it.
More of the question is, getting Mike Riley up here next year, Gustav Olofsson, giving these guys a fair look.
I think
that's a huge for next year.
I think Serious Matchup needs to spend less time on HF boards.
I went down that dark hole last night.
Why? Why would you do that?
It's that bad.
Oh, it's so bad.
There was actually one not terrible trade in there, but I don't remember what it was.
Okay.
We'll get into that later. We'll have episodes where we rip them to shreds. We'll get Graham in here because he's the king of...
We can make a whole episode of HF boards.
At 23 years old, do we still consider Mike Riley a prospect?
Technically? I don't even know. How many games he played in the NHL? It's 20-ish now, isn't it?
I would... Yeah.
So probably not, technically.
I mean, just for me, I would say... No.
Yeah.
Just, I think put by technicality aside.
By technical definition, I don't think he is. Is he a prospect in that he could still be a good player for this team down the road? Yeah, I think so. If that's what he means by that, is he a prospect as in, do you still think he could be good for this team? Yeah, I think that's possible. I think Mike Riley is a different version of Matt Dumba, if you would. Maybe not as good, a little bit older, but I still think he could be a good player for this team. He could be a top 4 guy. Maybe not on this team. Maybe on a different team. I don't know. Maybe he's trade bait. I don't know. I still have faith that he could be something. I mean, I don't think he's reached the prospect burnout phase of his career yet.
Wouldn't surprise me if Riley or Olofsson got traded this summer.
Not at all. No.
But that's, again,
be interesting
later on. How do you get rid of the Pominville contract this summer? What would you have to give up along with him to have him taken by the Coyotes?
Honestly, we talked about this earlier. We couldn't think of a name. Mike Riley. I think to get rid of Pominville, you probably have to give up a player like Mike Riley. Maybe even better. Maybe even an Alex Tuck. Maybe even, a Jules Eriksson.
That's where I said I don't like kind of draw the line at.
Yeah.
You're dipping into the top 4 prospects on this team of Eriksson, Greenway, Tuck.
Yeah.
Kunnin.
Yep. Kaprizov. Yeah. Sokolov even maybe.
You're dipping into those, then that's maybe a no deal for me. But
yeah, no,
like a Riley or Olofsson is fair game. If you want something to go away, that get rid of that.
Yeah, I could see that. If you want to ship out Olofsson and Pominville, then do that. I don't know why Arizona makes that deal. Maybe they can. Maybe they can. I don't know. Because they do have Datsuk money falling off this season.
Legends. Pavel Datsuk, Chris Pronger, coming off the books. So they got plenty of cap space.
Are they coming off
folks.
This season? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, there you go.
Have this here. They got a lot of money to go around.
Yeah. I think with you where I draw the line, if they want Mario Lucia, I think I'm willing to give him up to take Jason Pominville.
Sure, go ahead.
But I don't think I give up a Tuck, a Greenway, Kaprizov, Cunnin, and Eric Snack. I don't know. I mean, there's really not a ton of prospects that would fall into that range, but I do think Olofsson, Mike Riley, Lucia might be one of them.
And his last one, and he has to just drive the stake right through my heart. Why in the name of God are the Capitals not getting it done against the Pens? Honestly feeling sorry for Ovi and Giles. Well, first of all, thank you. And again, that's verified error. I'm glad to be in that category with Ovi as for your sympathy. But
tremendous.
We kind of hit on this, and it just... The Capitals are just outplaying the Pens.
Yeah.
And and this one is simply, again, goaltending, whereas Brain Holtby has just been average to below average. He's not been good.
See, so I think I know the answer to this, but do the same people who don't think that Jake Allen had anything to do with the Wild losing, do they think that the Capitals are losing because they're not good enough? Is that... I wonder, are those are the... I think those are the same people that are questioning Ovi's heart. You know what I mean? It's the same...
Wow.
For lack of a better term.
Those are the national pundits I don't care for that question Ovi's heart, but I could give you a gift show on how much Ovi wants to win.
Right.
Except for maybe the last game, which was, I'll give it, was questionable, but it stinks. That's all I can say. It stinks.
It stinks.
That's all it is. That is all it is. But...
Sorry.
I'll drink it. Don't worry. I'll drink it.
That's okay.
Ben was trying to order his tab, and he ordered another beer.
Looks like you're going to have to drink it now, Giles.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking one for the team.
I'm mixing beer and liquor.
After all the faces you're making, I think you might need it.
You've brought this up. Well, it's just this, just whatever this is. I don't know. I continue to drink it. So
good luck to you.
Yeah. All right. I think we're good. I don't even think we have time for jerseys. We have gone on way too long.
Right. We didn't talk about jerseys. We talked about the Wild jerseys, and that's very important. So.
We did. We got a little bit in there, and we found the clip in the show where I can insert the Ducks Fly Together part.
Yes.
So that'll wrap it up for us. We're going to be back next week. We'll probably record on a Sunday again at regular time and whatnot. It just schedules didn't collide for us to do that today.
Enjoy the early release, perhaps.
Yeah, you can get the Cinco De Mayo version of this podcast. But so that'll wrap it up. You can follow Ben and I on Twitter at Giles Farrell, at Ben Remington. Follow our podcast account for the third time on Twitter at GATG Wild Podcast. Follow us on iTunes. Subscribe on iTunes. Rate us on iTunes, please. We love your ratings. Everyone has been very kind to us except for those two pricks of you who weren't. You can find us on Libsyn, find us on Stitcher, find just the podcast on zonecoverage.com. You can find the podcast player on there, and it'll just play back the most recent episode, and
that'll be it.
I think I got it all. Thank you again to everyone for following along with us this week. It was weirdly a long show, even though I didn't think we had a whole lot to talk about, but, well, look at that. We turned it into quite a long time. So, from us this week, thank you again, and we will talk to you next week.
Later.
That's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.